What is going on, guys? Might be a windy episode. I'm trying to keep this somewhat short, but we might get a little bit crazy here. Talk about chains today. Not the front chains. Not the front chains. Talking about rear chains for three-wheeling. I was watching a video by another channel that I really like. Dude does really good work. I ain't really gonna mention names, but thing that kind of irked me. Dude is like, you don't need chains to three-wheel. Our chains do not make a car three-wheel, is what he said. He said that's the stupidest thing he's ever heard in his life. This car three-wheels because of chains. It will not three-wheel without chains. I'm going to show you. I should have showed you before I put chains on it, but we're going to talk a little bit about it. We're going to get into this subject. I've been seeing a lot of people ask about chains. I'm going to straight up say, I'm no guru about chains. I've chained a lot of cars. They all three-wheel. Guess whose car doesn't three-wheel chains? Mine. I've never had a car with three-wheel chains. I don't know why. This is the main one I've really tried. My Oldsmobile, I tried chaining it back in the day. That's a whole different story on that car. But yeah, this car here, I'm going to give you a rundown of what I got, why it struggles to three-wheel. I mean, obviously it's three-wheeling right now, you can see it. Mainly the way I built it kind of hindered myself. There are many, many factors that can make it three-wheel, as well as not make it three-wheel, and there are factors that will make it three-wheel without chains. Yes, it's totally possible. 100%. Billy and Max are going insane texting me, so you're going to hear a lot of that throughout the video. Shout out Jim City Welding. That's who I'm talking about when I said Billy. And Max from the Chop Shop. We got a little group thing going. So yeah, shout out to those guys. Hopefully we'll be seeing you guys next month. No, this month. In a few days, actually. God dang it, time's cruising. All right, let's get to this before we run out of time. All right, here is what I got. It's nothing fancy. I got 5 batteries. They look like crap, I know. Got 3 pumps. Two to the rears. You know, that one's left, that one's right, obviously. I do have accumulators on here. Now, with that being said, I took my accumulator off my driver's side. Reason being, when I first built this car, obviously I built it to chain it. I got a bridge and all that in there. I'll show you guys a bridge. I'll show you how I got chains. A lot of questions and topics about that. But getting back to this, I originally chained it. It would not stand three-wheel. The pump, it really wouldn't bog down like you normally hear a pump bog. You know, when you lift the car up, it goes, row, 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 row. Which is weird because when I just jack it up normally, when it limits out, it just it bogs down like it should. But when you try and three-wheel it, it just, you'd hear a bog, you'd hear a change in tone, but it would act like it never really built pressure. And I always kind of figured it was the accumulators. Now, I put slowdowns on there where I could turn the accumulators off, but it really didn't seem to make any difference whatsoever. So today, I was bored, you know, because I got so much free time on my hands all the time. But trying to get this thing ready to take it to Louisville, however you say it, Kentucky. We're going to get lucky in Kentucky. But I kind of want it three-wheel. I've been wanting it three-wheel for a long time, actually. So I'm kind of thinking it'll almost stand. If I got a full tank of gas and I lean to the right, it'll stand driving. So I was kind of thinking I could just chain it and use momentum to get it to tip over and then just bump up the cylinder just a little bit and it'll stand, which is kind of what I'm hoping on. To get this to stand, it did not lay over. After taking the accumulator out, it still did about the same as I was describing. It built up a little bit more pressure from what it seemed like, but what I eventually had to do, come over to the quarter panel, push down on it. It tipped a little bit, come off the ground a couple inches, bump the switch, come up a little bit more, but I got the popular today. Grabbed the roof in my hand and just picked it up as I bumped the switch and it rolled over, and that's when it fully locked up. So yeah, not perfect scenario as far as three-wheeling, but hey, it's standing. I'm happy with that. So I'm probably going to roll with it. Reason I'm having problems with the pumps, I'll bring you in again and show you. These 2 CCE pumps, they are probably, I'm going to say 12 years old, maybe even 14 years old. They were in this car when I first built it for my buddy. That's how old they are. They were in the Blue Rose. That's how old they are. I beat these pumps non-stop. I don't remember which one was the front one in the Blue Rose or which one was the front one when it was in this car. I do know that when I had it in the Blue Rose, I had the front that was originally in this car as the front in that car. I don't remember which one's which anymore. So they have a pretty good bit of wear on them. So I'm sure that has a lot to do with my pressure loss. When I took the accumulator out today, the oil is pretty bad. It was gray, which isn't good. You know, usually gray oil indicates grinding metal. Yeah. These are old pump heads. As I said, they are actual Marzocchi pump heads. So that's a good thing. That's back when CCE was putting good stuff in there. I guess they should still do it, but as an upgrade, that's when it was standard issue. Those are awesome pumps. That's why they're still in there. That's why I still rock those, because I love them. But yeah, another factor, well, many factors I'm going to get into that hurt my three-wheeling. One, you've seen I got 5 batteries. That's not a whole lot of weight. 2, they're in the center of the trunk, not distributed out towards the sides. That hurts you also. I did a long arm kit. Well, I built a long arm kit. is great for lifting up, but the factor that it kind of hurts you on as far as three-wheeling, that wheel doesn't really kick forward anymore. The reason I say it hurts your factor in that, I'm going to try and describe it best I can. Think about if you were to jack this car up with a jack, and you were to put a jack back here in the quarter panel. Probably wouldn't three-wheel when you go to jack it up. But if you put that jack up there, more than likely it'll three-wheel, just because it's creating a whole different pivot point. And with that pivot point being moved, it's also creating more leverage. Think of like a seesaw is the easiest way to think of it. Let me grab something kind of describe what I'm talking about. All right, I hope you like the setup. It was the easiest thing I could find by putting in the least effort. All right, this is our pivot point. This would be called your fulcrum. I think I'm not the best with geometry and all that good stuff. But yeah, think of it like a seesaw. This is halfway. Really easy to push. You know, it ain't perfectly balanced, obviously, because it goes back down. But it's really easy to push. Now, if you were to change your fulcrum, this makes it harder to push. You know, say I had like a 2x4 or something like that, that'd be pretty rough to push. You know, put it right there. Yes, I can still push it because it's a little piece of wood, but it's definitely a lot harder. You know, going like this, I can barely touch it. It goes up just fine. And that's the kind of point I'm trying to make. You know, you put your jack stand up here, yeah, it's going to be way easier. You got it back here, that'd be just like having it back on the back of your quarter panel. We're going to get back to this later on in the video because this literally is how a chain bridge works. It's kind of upside down. Hopefully I can describe it good enough for you guys to follow with me. But yeah, all it does is create a pivot point. Now, I always hear people say, where should I put my chain mounts on my bridge? I always put them straight up and down. I don't do the V's, I don't do the X, I don't cross them, none of that stuff. I don't put them in the center. Reason I don't put them in the center. Alright, I'm going to stop right there. A lot of it will work. I'm not saying it's not going to work, but I'll tell you the reasons why I do it this way. Number one, putting them in the center. I build lowriders that sit low. Real low usually. And I've had problems with the square tubing hitting those ears and messing up trailing arms, all that good stuff if you put them in the center. So that's one reason I put them in the center. Another reason I put them in the center is it takes longer to make that pivot. And that's where we're going to go back to the drawing board, literally. Alright, this is going to kind of simulate our chain being in the center of our bridge. It's going to take a lot more stroke to get that thing to pivot. Yes, it'll make it easier because that's less force that it takes to push. But as of right now, we're about 7 3/4 of an inch. And it's pretty much a 50-50 ratio. You know, we go over there and measure it. It's going to be roughly around 7 3/4. So you're going to take a lot of stroke to push that down versus coming over here. Right here, we're at 5.5. And as you can see over there, when I push that down, it goes way higher. Yes, it does take more force. That's kind of where you got to play with it and find a happy medium. And by finding a happy medium, I'm going to bring in another factor that a lot of people don't think of. And that factor is that right there. Springs. I have 2-ton pre-cuts. These are CC pre-cuts. They're actually some really old school. I mean, they're the same springs when I built this car originally. You know, they ride awesome, so why get rid of them? And they haven't collapsed. But what you have to consider is the tonnage on that spring. Like I said, these are 2-ton. I have seen 2 tons that just collapse. You know, they'll be touching coils. What happens when you have a spring that's too soft is you're basically losing the amount of stroke you have. The more stroke you put on that cylinder, the more that spring compresses. You're just losing that. You're not gaining any kind of pivoting whatsoever. So you want a spring that does collapse a little bit. That way you have a good ride. But you also have to take in consideration how much that spring is going to collapse and account for that when you're making your chain length. And now going back to the chains. As I said, I run mine pretty much straight up and down. I go from my spring pocket. I don't even remember my measurements. I'll grab a tape measure and see what it is. So the chain mount from the cylinder, from the center of the cylinder to the edge of that chain mount, about 5 inches, 4.5 to 5 inches right in there is what I use. It really isn't far at all. The reason I do that is to get the most pivot without using a whole ton of cylinder. That way I can still have a pretty decent lockup. I want to say I'm losing maybe 2 inches. I'll actually measure. I'll take everything back apart and measure what I lost. You know, right now I'm using full cylinder extension, and that's what's creating that pivot. And another thing that kind of the long arms hurt, it's a longer arm, so it has less of an arc that goes forward. If I had a short arm, it would actually kick that rear end really far forward, which is move the wheel further forward. which, believe it or not, would actually make this thing three-wheel higher. But like I said, that's kind of something you got to figure out what you want to do. You know, you want a high lockup, you want to be able to drive it really good with a high lockup. You know, there's a bunch of factors to take in. Now, I already know there's people in the comments saying I got a Cutlass with 6 batteries and 3 wheels with no chain bridge at all. Cool, you probably do. I'm not saying it can't be done. What you probably don't know, you may know, what you probably don't know, is you're more or less using a chain system, using a pivot point already. That's your upper trailing arms. A lot of times people pretty much cram a cylinder that's too big for that car in that car, and it'll make the upper trailing arm act as a chain, if you will. It'll max it out through its full suspension, and it'll create a pivot point. I do not like doing that. Not a fan of it. Never have been. One, you completely run a risk of overlocking everything and just destroying the rear end, destroying your frame, bending frames up. It's not really an ideal way of doing it. And there's a good chance you're going to bust the rear end ears off. I do reinforce the rear end ears, you know, just in case somebody wanted to do that. But I try and take as less stress off of those ears as I can. They are pretty fragile, hence why I reinforce them, even though I'm using chains. And another thing, without a bridge, you're adding a ton of stress to that spring pocket. They're already weak as it is. So getting it to 3-wheel without a bridge, you're multiplying that force. I don't even know what it'd be I don't even know what it'd be times by 3-wheeling it, but it is. I mean, you're putting the whole weight of the vehicle on that spring pocket. So, I mean, you can imagine what it's doing to it. And another way of 3-wheeling without a bunch of chains, weight. Yeah, you got 14 batteries in there. Yeah, it's gonna 3-wheel. You know, usually you get it up high enough, it'll 3-wheel. The LeSabre I built, we had 10 batteries in it. We had 16-inch cylinders, I want to say. It wouldn't 3-wheel without chains. Yeah, there's probably people that can get it out there 3-wheel. More than likely, you're going to be using that upper trailing arm as a pivot point. I put drop mounts on that car. That way it'd have as much travel as it could. Like I said, there are multiple ways of doing it. I'm just kind of stating how I've done it, how I've seen it work. But yeah, I put chains on it, and it laid right over perfectly. I had no issues whatsoever. Built many cars with 14 batteries. The Hulk, it's got 14 batteries, I think, 16, I don't remember. But it didn't have no chains, but it's got a lot of weight. You know, it's a G-body. It's got a short trunk. You know, the weight pivot point, you know, that's what made it lay over so easily. Like I'm saying, it can be done multiple ways. This is how I do it. This is how chains work. Just kind of want to bring you guys along, show you, because there's been a lot of topics of which works best. And I am going to build a car one day, year, century, I don't know. I'm going to put multiple chain mounts on it and see which works best. I'm fairly confident this works best. You can actually watch a video by RJ Tickler. He touched on this a long time. Yeah, RJ Tickler touched on it. Anyways, he had made a video about 3-wheeling, and he explained it really good, and he probably explained it better than I am. But it made a lot of sense, and that's one reason I do chain mounts the way I do them, because obviously it clicked with me and it made sense, and I've seen what it can do, and it works. It's kind of why I want to bring you guys along, that way you guys can see it and maybe get a little revised version of it. And one more thing I can add in, believe it or not, upper trailing arms, just the pinion angle, that'll affect the 3-wheel also, and that could be a problem on this car. I'm not saying it isn't, but I did that Caprice I built. It 3-wheeled really good, driver's side, passenger side. We did drop mounts on it, and for some reason it only wanted a 3-wheel on the driver's side. I remember when I reset it up, I would hit it in 3-wheel, and it would not stand like it used to. It used to lay over and hit a hard 3-wheel. And after adding the drop mounts, it struggled, and I couldn't figure it out. And I messed with it. I tweaked the suspension and got it to where it's 3-wheeling really good. And I didn't test the passenger side. And when he picked the car up from me, we went and cruised, and I was like, yeah, it works good. You know, it worked good before. You know, everything was working like it was supposed to, I thought. And we went and hit a driver's side 3, and whoop, laid right over. I was like, heck yeah. Went and hit the passenger side 3, and it did not want 3-wheel at all. And I was like, what the heck, you know? And that's what I was thinking. The only thing I had changed was the upper trailing arm mounts. You know, I dropped it down, and I had run into that problem before, and it needed more tweaking. What that tweaking was, I don't know. So I can't really help you out there. I just know that it's something you got to mess with. You got to find a happy medium. And that is why I like the turnbuckle style trailing arms. A lot of people hate on them. They say they'll loosen up. Yeah, they will. Not going to lie. If you threw a lot, they'll probably loosen up. I got mine super torqued down. I just lock one jam nut. They got 2 on there, but I like one to pivot, and that way it can twist like it's supposed to. It takes a lot of stress off of everything else. But I do lock one jam nut really, really tight. I may even have Loctite on there. I'm not really sure. I don't remember. I have had them back off if you three-wheel it a lot. But one of those things where you just look at your car, you know, do a little bit of maintenance on it, you won't have a problem. One thing to consider that I never did before, the higher your three-wheel is, the heavier your door gets. And door handles are not that strong. Luckily I haven't broke mine yet. They are really heavy. And yes, even with a partial, your body still gets twisted. Yeah, this thing will probably fall pretty violently. It was a little bit more violent last time. Yeah, that's because I don't have a lot of weight over there. Alright, with chains hooked up, I'm just going to this because that's an easy point to go to. Roughly about 37 inches. That's not how much lift my car really has. I'm just going off of that because it's the easy spot to measure, and I can compare it without chains at full lockup. So no chains. Yeah, we're at like 40. So was it like 3 inches? I think it was 37 before. So it's chained down 3 inches. Alright, so we got no chains whatsoever on the car now. Let's see if it'll three-wheel. Because chains don't make the car three-wheel, right? I'm going to lift that side up just a little bit because sometimes my cylinder likes to bind in the trunk. What? It doesn't tip over? Oh my god, big surprise. I'm going to push on the passenger side. It ain't going to help. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm like 247, and I couldn't help it out at all. Yeah, so chains play a pretty big factor. Just saying. In this case, maybe not every case. In this case, definitely a big factor. How about that? Door's still making noise. Switch is sticking. That's cool. Now, you can get everybody that's like, oh, I don't want to hear the sounds of chains. I get that, I understand. I used to like the sound of chains. I used to thought it was cool, make the car look tough, or make the car sound tough, I guess, you know. When I heard chains, I was like, yep, that car means business. Now, I think of it as a raggedy farm trailer. Yeah, here's a little tip for you. Heat shrink. You're still going to have your little rattle on the ends, which really I could have went a little bit further on heat shrink. Kind of ran out. But I'll show you what else you can use, because I kind of ran out. You can use electrical tape. Yeah, it's a little ghetto, I know. But it works. And I'm going to have this up at the top on the passenger side so I won't see it so much. Other things you can use, really there's all kinds of stuff. Bicycle inner tubes, I've seen people use those, cut it, slide it through there, it works. Believe it or not, a spring for like a screen door, I've seen people, I don't know if they screw them to the frame, probably hook them just in the body mount holes and run it to that. It holds tension on your spring. It looks ugly, I'll admit, but it holds tension on your spring. How much noise can we have in one filming? Apparently a lot. It holds tension on your spring. Also, struggle, man, I swear. Are we done? Alright, it holds tension on your spring. It's ugly, that's for sure, but it holds tension on your spring, keeps them quiet, also keeps your spring tucked up, that way it's not on the road. So while I'm thinking of it, how long of a chain do I have? Well, got 22 inches of chain. Got 22 inch cylinders. That doesn't make sense, you thinking? Well, take in consideration the spring. The spring adds a lot of height. And that's why I said you really just got to play with it, kind of figure out where the happy spot is. And as far as bolts, I use a 7/16 bolt. It is 3.5 inches long, which you're probably thinking it's a little bit short. That's because I cut the threads off. And the reason I cut the threads off, I'll show you. Because I don't want a bunch of threads sticking out of there. Now, the reason I have a longer bolt, you're probably thinking, well, I'll just use a shorter bolt. Well, you can see right there, that's the shoulder of that bolt. The shoulder sits on the outside of that square tubing. The threads are designed to be strong this way, not up and down or forward and backwards. You don't want to use the threads for strength. You want to use that shoulder for strength. So that's why I use that longer of a bolt and I cut it down. Alright, we got our chains hooked back up. This accumulator is still unhooked. It's sitting right there. So kind of show you guys what I was talking about, how this thing three wheels, mainly weight distribution is my fatal flaw. One of these days I'll add a bunch of batteries, probably put 10 batteries in here. That day isn't today. Yep. Lift both rears up just a little bit. Like I said, I never really had an issue before today, but my passenger side cylinder got stuck in between the body and the frame, which is kind of weird. But it is what it is. Set that one up just a little bit, and we'll lift our left rear up. Front's all the way up. And let's see, like my first time in switches here. We'll lift our left up, it'll bind up, and I'll either push it over, probably have to go with the quarter panel and start to get at the tip. We'll see what it does. So you hear it binding? Yeah, I'm really freaking strong. Yeah. Let me give her a little bit of leverage. I'm fatter than strong, alright? There we go. Now the chain is creating a pivot point, and that's just making it stay up now. One more thing to consider when you got kind of a higher three-wheel, battery acid. Yeah, there's the vent for the batteries. I was three-wheeling this thing a while back, and I noticed like water on the trunk, and I was like, it hadn't rained in a while, I hadn't washed the car, and I seen it there. That's battery acid leaking out. That's not good. So I'm gonna pretty much end it here. Hopefully I didn't get everybody too riled up. If I did, leave a comment in the comment section. Good or bad, they all help the channel, so I don't care. Anyways, that being said, I appreciate you guys watching. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Hopefully it helped you out. Hopefully it kind of didn't confuse you more than help you, really. Hopefully it clarified a little bit on, you know, different ways of running chains and why you can run chains, why you should run chains, whatever. You know, hopefully it helps you anyways. I'm gonna leave it here. Remember, you won't know what you can do. Maybe make your car three-wheel, or maybe you can't. I'm still gonna try it with accumulators. I don't think it'll be able to tip with accumulators. I'm pretty sure I won't be able to get it to tip with accumulators. Accumulators basically absorb all that pressure that I'm trying to use as a pivot. I'm kind of hoping I can just roll three and then bump it up and get it to pivot. We'll see. I don't know. I'll keep you guys informed on that. Anyways, appreciate you watching, and we'll see you in the next one. All right, let's see what it'll do with the accumulator hooked up. I really don't have any high hopes at all, to be honest. Fluid. Probably not the best to be testing it with pump on fluid.